Today, other interesting political news, you have Vivek telling the federal government should stop spending money and giving money to sanctuary cities. Now, this is a little bit long of a video, but perhaps one of the most hot topics in politics these days, since the border is as the security of the border is basically as pitiful as the White House, where the White House, well, perhaps that's just planned ignorance, or not planned ignorance, that's just corruption. They actually found cocaine in the White House in 2023, and the Secret Service just couldn't find out who brought it into the White House. Which, again, if you think of how many cameras are in the White House and how much security the White House is, there's no conceivable way they don't know who it is. So that's just an example of corruption, perhaps. Well, similar to the border. Granted, the border has been a debate for decades. I can't but think it's one of the political issues that they just keep alive so they can fundraise on the left and the right. Because, again, we've had this same debate for decades. It's always the same formula. They'll let people in. They'll say, oh, yeah, if we give them amnesty, then we'll build a secure border. And they just fail time and time again. Now, there has been some border wall constructed throughout the years, but still, an overwhelming volume, it's still obviously not adequate. That's why we have a record number of illegal immigration in the United States, which is a concern for a myriad of reasons. Now, Vivek specifically says, quote, stop federal funding for sanctuary cities, require Central American countries to shut down their own borders and close the Darien Gap before getting another dime. Use our military to seal the border, end birthright citizenship for illegals, and start mass deportations. We don't need innocents like Lake and Riley to pay the price for our failures, unquote. Although his voice is infinitely better than mine, so without further ado, we'll also play a little clip of him as well.
I want to take a few minutes to explain what the heck is really going on at the border. It can seem chaotic, confusing to a lot of people. How the heck is it that we have millions of migrants, 12 million by the end of Biden's term, 12 million that will have crossed illegally into this country? How did that happen? Is this a technical challenge? The country that put a man on the moon can't figure this out? No, it's not a technical issue. It comes down to incentives. Let me talk about the incentives of the people who are actually enacting these disastrous border policies, the Democratic Party. The incentives are win the election. And what they're effectively doing is importing future voters while limiting the export of current voters. That's what's going on. You're not supposed to say it that way, but it's the truth of the matter. Go back to what the Democratic Party was saying 10, 20, 30 years ago. They talked about the importance of mass migration to change the composition of the electorate to secure lasting electoral majorities. Well, you know what? When somebody tells you they're going to execute a plan, then they execute that plan, and they actually has the intended result that they planned on, you better believe them. That's exactly what happened in this country. So they don't want to deport illegals because those are future voters that they could otherwise leave in this country. And they want further potential voters for the future to be entering this country, including even those who are entering illegally. So this isn't a technical challenge, it's a challenge of will. Now let's look at the incentives of the people who are actually coming here. What do they look at? What's the cost of coming? What's the probability of success of crossing that border? And what's the upside of actually being here? We need to enact the policies that turn those incentives upside down. Let's start with ending the incentives to be here illegally in the first place. Stop federal funding for sanctuary cities. End birthright citizenship for the kids of illegal migrants. It doesn't apply to them. And stop providing these federal taxpayer-funded benefits to people from the south side of Chicago to Michigan, where I was recently, to actually pay people to be in this country even more than we're paying our own citizens, many of whom are in need. That ends the incentives to be here illegally. Now, how do we reduce the probability of crossing? This is a simple problem to solve. Complete the wall, use our own military to secure our own southern border. We're using our military resources to protect other people's borders. How about using our own military to protect our own border? Use aquatic barriers in the Rio Grande. I've visited the southern border. These aquatic barriers, they work. Texas is trying to use them. The federal government is stopping them from using them, not because they don't work, but because they do work. That's how you seal that border. And then you require those Central American countries to stop that northward flow of migrants in the first place. Every one of those countries should not receive another dime of U.S. aid, at least until every one of those countries has sealed and barricaded their own borders, all the way from Venezuela to the southern border of Texas, including through the Darien Pass, where we now see a massive northward flow of illegal migrants. That needs to end, and we can use the power of our own purse to actually do it. He who pays the piper calls the tune. We're paying the piper and we're not calling the tune. We have the worst of all worlds. If we're going to give them another dime, they better build their own border barricades as well. We have the border crisis then solved. Stop that northward flow, ending foreign aid to Central America, use our military to seal the border, complete the wall, use aquatic barriers on the Rio Grande, stop federal funding for sanctuary cities, and end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals. Combine that with the largest mass deportation in history. You know what? If we've had the largest illegal entry in history, we also need the largest mass deportation in history. That's not cruel, that's not racist, that's not inhumane, that's common sense.
But that's what the headlines will all say. So I can't but think or suspect if Trump does win the election and he does enact these policies, granted, some say you shouldn't care what your opponents or your enemies say about you, but every news article will paint him in the worst possible light and call him, of course, heartless and cruel for moving people who are here illegally out of the country. It's also a major security concern in terms of we have no idea who these people are or where they're from. And spoiler alert, if you live under a rock, the United States has a lot of enemies.
Use provisions of the law that we're not already using. 287G is a section of the law that, for some reason, Democrats have ignored. They say there's only 6,000 ICE agents. How could they possibly go after millions of illegals? Here's the answer. Actually use the existing laws that are already on the books.
Oh, good old pop-up. Oh.
Take a few minutes to...
Oh, sorry about that. Oh, X Twitter, you let me down? Of all the inopportune times?
Minutes to...
Alright, let's see if it'll load.
We can use the power of our own purse to actually do it.
Oh, there you go.
He who pays the piper calls the tune. We're paying the piper and we're not calling the tune. We have the worst of all worlds. If we're going to give them another dime, they better build their own border barricades as well. We have the border crisis then solved. Stop that northward flow, ending foreign aid to Central America, use our military to seal the border, complete the wall, use aquatic barriers on the Rio Grande, stop federal funding for sanctuary cities, and end birthright citizenship for the kids of illegals. Combine that with the largest mass deportation in history. You know what? If we've had the largest illegal entry in history, we also need the largest mass deportation in history. That's not cruel, that's not racist, that's not inhumane, that's common sense. Use provisions of the law that we're not already using. 287G is a section of the law that, for some reason, Democrats have ignored. They say there's only 6,000 ICE agents. How could they possibly go after millions of illegals? Here's the answer. Actually use the existing laws that are already on the books. 287G allows the federal government, including ICE, to use local law enforcement to serve their warrants. That's over 1 million local law enforcement officials that can actually do it. We don't need new laws. The debate in Congress about the border bill that they're blaming Republicans for not passing, it wasn't a U.S. border bill. It was a Ukrainian border bill, first of all.
That was literally the most expensive line item on that budget. I think it was 50 to 60 billion to go to Ukraine. And the budget, I think it was like 20 billion proposed for the quote-unquote southern border security. It was actually for processing resources. It wasn't actually to put a barrier or actually secure the border. But again, I can't help but see in politics, they always, whenever they name a bill, usually it's the opposite effect. I mean, just like the Patriot Act. One of the most ironic names in history since it removed any semblance of privacy or rights that many Americans had. We barely have any left, or so it seems truth be told. And I would argue one of the most unpatriotic things ever passed.
And second of all, we don't need those new laws. What we need is a new president who enforces the laws that are already on the books. Remain in Mexico is still the law of the land in the United States. Most Americans don't recognize that. It's that we have an executive branch that's failing to enforce it. And this is where I want to see our Republican Party level up. We can't fall for the traps that the other side has laid, getting into some legislative debate and saying, oh, we were the ones that didn't pass the law. No, get to the fact of the matter. Everything I've laid out here, that's something that the U.S. president and the executive branch is already empowered to do. We need a new president who actually uses the Article 2 power to execute the laws of the United States. That president is going to be Donald Trump. He's going to need the people around him, as I believe he will have this time around, to actually enforce that law effectively. And if we do, we don't have to be this crumbling nation with open borders that's in this state of Roman Empire style decline. No. We can still be a nation where No matter who you are or where you come from, if you come through the front door, you still can get ahead in this country with your own hard work and commitment and dedication. But that's only reserved for the people who do it the right way, not the criminals who come through the back door. Your first act of entering this country cannot break the law. That's what it means to stand for the rule of law. And it's no surprise that the people who do break the law to enter this country are among those who are breaking the law then further while they're in this country. We need to revive standing for the rule of law. That's not a black idea or a white idea. It's not a Democrat idea or even a Republican idea. It is an American ideal that our founding fathers enshrined in our Constitution. We are a nation of laws. That's what we've abandoned. That's what we're going to bring back. And I think that's how Donald Trump is going to win this November in a landslide by uniting Americans from cities to suburbs to rural communities across this country to restore that rule of law in the United States. And we have a very practical plan for how we can first begin by sealing that border.
Well said, and one of the few politicians who actually has bullet points on how to get things done. Now, how many of those politicians in DC actually have the motivation or familiarity to actually do any of these things? Probably few and far in between, but I think this is going to be one of the most important political issues going to the election because so many people are affected negatively because of illegal immigration. And I think a lot of Americans are going to see, especially the disparity between how much resource allocation that illegal immigrants get versus United States citizens. I mean, famously in New York, they're getting $1,000, multi-$1,000 out in gift cards to them. They're getting 3 meals a day in a luxury hotel, and yet we have veterans who are homeless and starving. That doesn't. Where do you think our tax dollars should be going? Perhaps the oldest debate of all time, but perhaps I'm alone in this assessment. Maybe Vivek's gonna get ratioed in the comments. They'll all be all against him. Maybe probably not, but let's dive in the comments and find out. One of the first ones calls Paul Zazupa says, quote, sanctuary cities should have travel restrictions. Companies should be barred from delivering goods and services to them. These cities are like terrorist states. Our military should seal the border and then go through every city, state, and town and deport illegals. I'm getting 130 likes. Our favorite leftist, well, not really favorite, but I do follow them, so we get a little bit of contrarian statements, and we don't just have kind of a boring echo chamber or echo room. I forget what the trendy term is. But Luke Zaleski says, quote, Vivek was never a serious candidate. He was Trump 2016 Redux in disguise, a complete BS artist and media huckster. He has zero workable ideas. Dude is a collection of focus groups, targeted points, talking points, and salesman shtick created to paper over his anti-government pro-autocracy campaign, unquote. Granted, that was mentally vacuous, but 34 people did agree with Luke Zaleski and his statement. Now, it's hilarious. He says, Trump or Vivek was never a serious candidate, and yet Vivek, I would argue, is one of the most successful candidates for the Republican primary, given the resource and past that he had in terms of no political background. And yet, I think he peaked around, what was it, 13 to 14% in the poll aggregator, which again, for someone with no political experience, is exceptionally good. We had Chris Christie running for Republican nominee. He peaked around 3 to 4% in the poll aggregators. So he did exponentially better than most politicians, which is really admirable, I would say. And he says he's a BS artist. I don't know if Vivek paints. I'm not a critique of most paintings or art. Granted, I would say modern art is mostly crap. If you just throw paint at a canvas, that takes no talent. That's trash to me. But I'm not sure. Is he an artist? That's a good question, Luke. I mean, he probably doesn't mean it that way, but fascinating to think about. Scrolling down, you have Farzan Al-Balkh saying, quote, agree, is a picture of Barack Obama, and he has a puppet, and the puppet is Biden, and it says, this puppet was never even close to becoming the master. And quote, getting 140 likes. Scrolling down here. We've got the conservative alternative saying, quote, vote Trump, seal border, it's really that simple. Unquote, getting 132 likes. First words, though, not an A+ for marketing because that was not the first comment. And I don't think this is his first words, although if they were, he is extremely articulate if those are really his first words. Now, this alleged first words profile says, sanctuary cities should be outlawed in America. It's not about sanctuary, it's about aid and comfort for the enemy. And if you don't think they're the enemy, look no further than the brutalized body of Lake and Riley, unquote, getting 330 likes. And yeah, it definitely doesn't help the Democrats' talking points when American citizens are being killed more and more by people who are there illegally. One of the most viral things that happened a couple weeks ago He had an illegal immigrant beat the crap out of a cop in New York City. They arrested the illegal immigrant, let him out without bail, and he flipped off the camera with a smirk on the way out. Because they're above the law in that case. I mean, I can't imagine how happy the police is about that. They assaulted a police officer and got out of jail bail free or cash free, whatever they call it, and just roaming around now. Astonishing. Now, Gunther Eagleman says, quote, "This is common sense and our House GOP doesn't have it on cocaine." 554 likes, which, yeah, the GOP and the Republican Party, they're really bad at marketing as well as actually following through on their word. That's why it's only Republicans where you have pejorative Republican in name only, or rhinos, where they run saying they're Republican. They say Republican things, but then when they get to D.C., they vote as Democrats. Fascinatingly enough, I've yet to see that with Democrats who are secretly Republicans in disguise. Has that ever happened? But yeah, the GOP definitely needs to change their marketing and actually, follow through on the ideals that they espouse. If they actually did that, I think the donations to the party would go up exponentially and people would actually believe in it more. Now, Valentin Gomez says, quote, "I agree with you, Vivek. You cut the money flow and they start hurting even more, so they will start mass deportations and every single illegal immigrant that hopped the border on cocaine." 95 likes. Though, fact check, they don't all actually hop over. There are actually many places where there's no fence at all, so they just walk over. Scrolling down, Fortunate Son says, quote, "Sadly, the only way to end birthright citizenship is to amend the Constitution, but while we're at it, end dual citizenship as well." On cocaine, 19 likes. Well, Vivek has actually brought up that he believes it's unconstitutional because, again, the people are here illegally, so how do their kids have automatic birthright citizenship? So that debate has been had for quite some time. I don't think we've actually seen it go to the court many times. It'd be interesting to see what the Supreme Court looks into in terms of the original founding father documents and how that might translate. In regards to dual citizenship, I don't see anything. I really don't see anything wrong with that. I have several friends who are come from other countries and they have dual citizenship as. I don't see any really issue with that unless he's insinuating it in a different type of way. Scrolling down. You have Nation Gone Under says, quote, "Hopefully you are VP and we will get this done a while ago." I'm quoting 8 likes. Richard Manso says, quote, "Better yet, require parents to be citizens for their offspring to get citizenship upon birth. Pushes immigrants, even legally documented, to become citizens rather than just residents." I'm quoting 8 likes. Sam Vallis says, the 11 sanctuary states are California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon. Who else? He says there's 11, 3, 6, 7. That's only 8. Is it? 1, 2, 3. I mean, I'm not surprised those are the sanctuary states. Let's see here. So I'm scrolling down more and more. Just overwhelming support for Vivek. And again, I think because of the resource allocation, as well as the crime and a myriad of other issues, as well as security issues, I think that will be one of the biggest political topics going to the election. And it'll be interesting to see how many people in the middle are affected by this, or how many people on the right. I mean, you have the people who will vote for the left and the right no matter who is on the ballot. But really, it is all about finding the people who are in the middle to really persuade them to your ideals and your thoughts and win them over with your policy ideals. So it'll be interesting to see how many people does this message resonate with, and is it enough for Trump to win the election if he is allowed to run? I mean, let me know in the comments if you think this could be a winning message, or could it actually shoot Republicans in the foot? As always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. And yeah, we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of the month, so if you could click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a comment to give me some additional feedback so I can learn how to make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe, fight the good fight.